Peace and shalom, Israel. Before we start the lesson, hit the notification button because we upload lessons every week and I don't want you to miss a single one of them. Like, comment, subscribe, and if there's a topic you would like for us to cover, we'll see what we can do. So until next time, cue the music. All praises to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to everyone joining me on this program. This is the Fountain of Israel's Bible Studies program. And in this video, I will be talking about the pagan holidays that is coming up. In other words, heathen of the season of the heathens. Let me say that again. It is the season of the heathens. And I don't mean that as an insult or some sort of underhanded, comment. I'm just saying it because, we like catchy little titles. But at the same time, it is the season of the heathen. It is about all the holidays that are coming up, from All Hallows Eve or Halloween, and you have your Thanksgiving. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have your Christmas, obviously. And then when we get back around to the spring, we'll have the Easter, the big ones. We'll have these big pagan holidays that everyone, that the world just goes crazy over, that actually marvels over these particular holidays. Now what happens is, when we grow up, we just do this thing as a tradition. Everybody else is doing it. You go down the block, everyone has their Halloween decorations everywhere with jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins and ghosts and all these other things, and vampires and so forth and all that, right? And everyone does it. So you grow up as a little child. That's why a lot of the world goes after children, because we just do things, and if it seems fun and it seems palatable, we're going to go with it. We're just going to do it. We're just going to go along to get along. Everyone else is doing it. And the pressure is on, even at school, when children having their little costumes. Then your child or the other children will go home and be like, hey, I want a costume. And so we're going to have these type of things. This social conditioning. It's just conditioning. This is what everyone's doing. I want to do it. I don't want to be odd man out. I don't want to be the one person that's different. I want to do what other people are doing. And that's what happens to us as we grow up as children. It's the same thing happening to your children. We're being socially conditioned. The world is shaping us, okay? We know who is the prince of the power of the air. And so this influence, anything that will cause you to stray away from the Most High, that's what the enemy wants. That is what he is after. He's after your mind, and he's after the mind of your children. And so we do these things by tradition, and we never really look behind the meaning or the origins. And so today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to look behind the origins of these major holidays. So the folly days are upon us, and now let's go ahead and pull back the curtain and see where all this comes from. So I'm going to start with Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, right? So I'm looking at a little resource here. This one, actually, you could just go to Wikipedia and get that one. But this one is Halloween, or Halloween, right? A contraction of All Hallows Evening, all right? Halloween is just a contraction or shortened version of All Hallows Evening, also known as All Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and All Saints Eve. It is a yearly celebration observed in a number of countries on October 31st, the eve of the Western Christian Feast of All Hallows Day, the Western Christian Feast of All Hallows Day. It initiates the Triduum of All Hallowtide, the time in the liturgical year dedicated to remembering the dead, including saints or hallows, martyrs, and all the faithful departed believers within All Hallowtide. The traditional focus of All Hallows Eve revolves around the theme of using humor and ridicule to confront the power of death. According to many scholars, All Hallows Eve is a Christianized feast initially influenced by Celtic harvest festivals. with possible pagan roots, particularly the Gaelic Samhain. It looks like Samhain, right? But it's Samhain. Other scholars maintain that it originated independently of Samhain and has solely Christian roots. Solely Christian roots. And so we do it anyway. Now, obviously, we shouldn't be worshiping the dead, but any holiday, any tradition that promotes worshiping the dead, that's going to be a problem. Continuing. Typical festive Halloween activities include trick-or-treating or related to guising, attending costume parties and decorating, carving pumpkin into jack-o'-lanterns and lighting bonfires, apple bobbing, visiting haunted house attractions, playing pranks, telling scary stories, and watching horror films. In many parts of the world, the Christian religious observance of All Hallows Eve, including attending church services and lighting candles on the graves of the dead, remain popular. Although in other locations these solemn customs are less pronounced in favor of a more commercialized and secularized celebration. Because many Western Christian denominations encourage, although no longer require, abstinence from meat on All Hallows Eve, the tradition of eating certain vegetarian foods for this vigil day developed, including the consumption of apples, colcannon cider, potato pancakes, and soul cakes. Okay, so we have an idea where some of these traditions come up. These are some of the things that are out there. These are some of the things that were out there that we've been just doing it. We do the surface level stuff, the costume, the trick-or-treating, bobbing for apples, but we don't look at the origins. How does it all come about? Where is this from? And now that you are an adult, now that you are a believer, now that you are a Berean or like one, it's up to you to find out what's going on, break that cycle. If it does not benefit you, if it profits you none, then you break that cycle. Even though you may have grown up doing these things, you break that cycle and then you teach your children otherwise. It's time for us to put these things away. I'm going to another source here, and it says here, historian Nicholas Rogers, exploring the origins of Halloween, notes that while some folklorists have detected its origins in the Roman feast of Pomona, the goddess of fruits and seeds, or in the festival of the dead called Parentalia, it is more typically linked to the Celtic festival of Samhain. This is what we talked about before, which comes from the Old Irish for summer's end. Samhain, okay, it's pronounced Samhain, was the first and most important of the four quarter days in the medieval Gaelic calendar and was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, and Isles of Man. It was held on or about the 31st of October or November 1st. And kindred festivals were held at the same time of the year by the Brittonic Celts. For example, Calan Gate or in Wales, Calan Gaeaf in Cornwall, and Calan in Brittany. Samhain and Calan Gate are mentioned in some of the earliest Irish and Welsh literature. The names have been used by historians to refer to Celtic Halloween costumes up until the 19th century and are still the Gaelic and Welsh names of Halloween. So we're looking at these type of things, and we will get into the scriptures, but we want to see what all this is about. Okay, so we're going way back to really dig deep in there. Now, one of the things that they mentioned a couple times has been Samhain, right? So if we look at Samhain now, it's Samhain for those who would like to do a little bit of research on that, but it's pronounced Samhain, right? And it is a Gaelic festival making the end of the harvest season and the beginning of the winter, or the darker half of the year. It is celebrated from sunset on October 31st to sunset on November 1st, or the 1st of November, or about halfway between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. It is one of the four Gaelic seasonal festivals, along with Imbolc, Beltane, and Lognasag. Historically, it was widely observed throughout Ireland, Scotland, and Isles of Man. Kindred festivals were held at the same time of the year in other Celtic lands. For example, the Brittonic, Calan Gaeaf, or Wales, and those three that we were telling you about, and Cornwall and Brittany. In Brittany. Now, as you notice, I like to cross-reference, okay? I find one source and you find another. It's like when you do research paper. You want to find as many sources as you can to see if everything is true, if everything is cooperating, is there harmony, okay? And so we're seeing a lot of harmony here from 3 different sources. Continuing on, Samhain is mentioned in some of the earliest Irish literature and is known to have a pre-Christian root. Many important events in Irish mythology happen or begin on Samhain. It was the time when cattle were brought back down from the summer pastures and when livestock was slaughtered for the winter. As at Beltane, special bonfires were lit. These were deemed to have protective and cleansing powers, and there were rituals involving them. Samhain was seen as a liminal time when the spirits or fairies could more easily come into our world. Most scholars see that Eos as remnants of the pagan gods and nature spirits. It was believed that the Eos, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, needed to be propitiated to ensure that the people and their livestock survived the winter. Offerings of food and drink were there for them, or left there for them. The souls of the dead were also thought to revisit the homes. Feasts were had, at which the souls of kin dead, or dead kin, were also thought to revisit the homes. Feasts were beckoned to attend and place set at the table of them. Mumming and guisings were part of the festivals and involved people going door to door in costume or disguise, reciting verses in exchange for food. The customs, so this is where you get your trick-or-treating, guys. The customs may have been a way of imitating or guising oneself for the spirits. Divination rituals were also a big part of the festival and often involved nuts and apples. In the late 19th century, Sir John Rees and Sir James Fraser suggested that it was the Celtic New Year. And this view had been repeated in some other scholars. And let's just finish up here. In the 19th century, the Roman Catholic Church shifted the dates of All Saints' Day to 1st of November, while the 2nd of November later became All Souls' Day. Boy, the Roman Catholic Church really flexing their power, right? Over time, Samhain and All Saints' Souls merged to create the modern Halloween. Historians have used the name Samhain to refer to Gaelic Halloween customs up until the 19th century. Since the latter 20th centuries, Celtic neo-pagans and Wiccans have observed Samhain or something based on it as a religious holiday. Neo-pagans in the southern hemisphere often celebrate Samhain at the other end of the year. Okay, so I can tell you this. I actually know one person who happens to be Wiccan, and she says it proudly. She says, hey, this is Samhain, this is All Saints' Day, this is our holiday. Okay, and so when she sees so many Christians co-opting this particular holiday, she gets a little offended. She's like, why are the Christians taking our holiday? Okay, so she's openly pagan. Okay, she doesn't make any bones about it. She didn't hide the fact or anything like that. She didn't pretend, and she really is, but she didn't pretend that she's not. She openly says, hey, I'm Wiccan. Okay, I'm pagan. So, and this is just someone that I know. Okay, or that I know of. And so what we have to realize is that these, everything that we do, it means something. There's an origin behind it. It means something. And so when you learn what it means, then you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Why is this happening when you know better? When you know better, you do better. Or at least you should. So let's go ahead and go into the scriptures. Let's go to Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17. Okay, I'm going to pick it up at verse 1. Revelation 17 and 1 reads, and there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. All these things. You notice when I was reading all these resources that a lot of things were mixed. Okay, it's from Roman Catholic Church to the Celtic, okay, to all these other, everything just kind of mixed. We just kind of do it, and everything, it's a free for all. We can do whatever we want. What other tradition do we want to add in there. We want to light some candles and put it on grave sites. We want to put on costume. Let's go bobbing for apples. Everything, just everything. They all have an origin. They all have a meaning. But if we put a little sugar on it, meaning if we make it palatable, then people just go with it. We make it fun, people just go with it. We make it interesting. We make it taste good. We just go with it. Verse 3, it says, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of the abomination and filthiness of her fornication. That means you dealing with every other culture and every other heathen and every other nation. And it says, don't go the way of the heathen, right? And we'll get to that, of course. But that's what happens. That's what happens. We just go with it. Go to Revelation 18. And I'm just going to read one verse. Revelation chapter 18. And let's go to verse 3. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Okay, so it doesn't matter. We do everything pagan, everything carnal. We mix it in this world. We mix it in with what we mix it. We pervert the truth. This is what happens. That's actually what happens. Let's just put that on the table. We pervert the truth, and then we do things because remember what Israel did. They go up and say they want to go see what the other nations did. Well, how did they worship their God? Let's worship our God like the other nations. And of course, the Most High says, no, don't do what they do. Don't inquire after their gods. Don't serve me like they serve their gods. And yet, we do. And a lot of times, Israel will go after these other gods because it's more fun. Because you can do whatever you want. Deuteronomy chapter 7. Deuteronomy chapter 7, and I'm going to pick it up at verse 25. The graven images of their gods shall ye burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to the Lord thy God. He didn't want any of that. I don't want anything to do with these other gods. I don't want you serving me at all like these other gods. I don't want any part of that. You're going to get caught up. You're going to become ensnared. 26. Neither shall thou bring an abomination into thine house. Okay, so don't bring any abominations unto your house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. You're going to be accursed if you do these things. But thou shalt utterly detest it. So you're going to hate it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. So all those little things that they do. Now, the first lineup, we're dealing with what? Halloween, right? Here in the West. Okay? We're dealing with Halloween. So all the things that have to do with Halloween, no. No pumpkins, no jack-o'-lanterns. Don't do that. No costumes and trick-or-treating. Don't do it if you're a believer. Now, if you're not a believer, you shouldn't even be on this lesson. You shouldn't even be on this channel. Just go do what you want. But if you're a believer, no, you don't do those things. And I'm not talking about an individual item is evil per se. Okay? You can eat sweet potato pie anytime. You can eat pumpkin pie anytime. I'm saying don't go get a pumpkin and carve out a jack-o'-lantern. That's what I'm saying. But you have people, they do stuff like this. They do the scary stories, and then they want to do seances and so on and so forth. When will we learn? Let's go to Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18. And I'm going to pick it up at verse 9. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abomination of those nations. Don't do like them. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that use divination, or an observer of the times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Okay, that's dealing with the dead, trying to communicate with the dead. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee. Okay? So don't go over to get your palm read and get your fortune, and don't do the ghost tour, in New Orleans. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. He don't want you to do these things. I know a lot of times we're curious, but don't do those things. And yet, many of us already have. Deuteronomy chapter 31. Deuteronomy chapter 31. I'm going to pick it up at verse 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thy days approach that thou must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I may give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in the pillar of a cloud, and a pillar of the cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and this people will rise up and go a-whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whether they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. Look at what he says they're going to do. They're going to do this, right? Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. And many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that night, Are not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us? Exactly. And I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils which they shall have wrought, in that they are turned unto other gods. Now therefore write ye this song of you, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. Now he said what's going to happen. He said they're going to do this. This is going to happen when you die. And so he told Moses, and he let Joshua know as well. Man, Joshua was there as well, to tell them exactly what's going to happen, because it is so enticing. The other nations, the other gods, the way other people do what they do, because it's I don't know what it is. It's just interesting. It's just fun. It appeals to the flesh. It appeals to your baser desires. It appeals to your lust. It appeals to your curiosity. The reason why the enemy does the things that he does is because it works. Knows your weakness. So the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to wake up? Wake up out of this delusion. Let's go over to Judges chapter 2. Let's see what the Most High said that they were going to do. And indeed, they did it. So Judges chapter 2. I'm going to pick it up at verse 10. And also all the generations were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. So they forgot all about it. They don't know their heritage. This is why it's so important for us to teach our children the Most High. Now, they may grow up and stray away, but you may have a prodigal son or a daughter situation, or they may not come back. But it's your job to tell them the right way. You sit them down, you grab some resources, you get in front of the computer, you grab some books, you show them, or you put them in front of a video or a lesson like this, and you show them. You let them know. Verse 11, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and served Baalim. And they forsook the Lord God, the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods, of the gods of the people that were round about them. What everybody else is doing, that's what they did. And bowed themselves unto them and provoked the Lord to anger. And they forsook the Lord and served Baal and Ashtaroth. So that's going to come up again. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of the spoilers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. They had no might, they had no power. They wanted to be so much like them, and they became snared and consumed by the enemies all around them. Wheresoever they went out, the hand of the Lord was against them for evil, as the Lord has said, and as the Lord has sworn unto them, and they were greatly distressed. Now you have to understand that they had a deal, they had a covenant, they had a contract with the Most High. All the way back in Exodus, they had a contract. And we can look way back in the Torah where he's saying, teach this into your children's children. Teach this to every generation. So the parents fell short. They were derelict in their duties. So everyone is paying. Everyone, all of us is paying for this. Verse 16, nevertheless the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoil them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord. But they did not so. They just didn't do it. They didn't want to do it. This is why the curses continue, brothers and sisters. This is why it keeps going. Because nobody wants to break the cycle. You should start with observing the Sabbath at least. Getting rid of pagan holidays. Teach your children that. We have just completed all of our annual feasts, right? Outlined Leviticus 23. We just completed that. Okay? Now, you have one if you want to include, the Feast of Dedication, that's up to you. Okay? We have one more. But my point is, we have plenty of days outlined and allowed and sanctioned in Scripture that we can observe and celebrate and party and be merry and rejoice, that we can do ourselves and teach our children that pleases the Most High. But you want to go out to these other nations and do what they do. Question is, what does it profit you? Revelation 21. Revelation 21. Then we're going to go into this whole idea of, Thanksgiving. Revelation 21. Let's pick it up at 7. 21 and 7, he said, he that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful, and unbelieving, and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Understand the people who are not going to get in. All these pagan people and these idolaters, and whoremongers and sorcerers, all these people, they're not gonna make it. So why would you want to do the things that they have done and are doing right now? Why would you want to participate in that? Why would you not warn your children of something like that, of this particular folly? Why would you not say anything? I'm gonna finish up this whole idea of Halloween, and we're gonna transition, but I just want you to get the gravity of what's going on. I want you to get the gravity of the situation. It may seem like it's no big deal, but apparently serving other gods is a big deal to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you don't think any of these things mean anything to the God that you claim you serve, then just put the Bible down, walk away. Go live your best life now and just have a ball. If you don't believe anything, if you don't believe any of the scriptures, if you don't believe that he cares about how we worship, if you don't care about what he cares about, put the Bible down. Go be married. Live your best life right now. To thy own will be true. At some point, you have to make a decision. At some point, you have to be sober in mind, sober in thought. At some point, you have to realize, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be here in this body forever, and I'm going to have to face my maker one day. And what am I going to say? How's that meeting going to go? You tell me, how's that meeting going to go? What do you think's going to happen? If he's coming to judge, we have to stand before judge and we have judgment, and we have to account for every idle word. When he's looking at everything, looking at our works, whether they be good or whether they be evil. I mean, what do you think he's going to judge us on? He's going to judge us on what we think or do. Case in point, the last scripture that I read, it's either something you're thinking or something you're doing, right? When you look at verse 8 in Revelation 21, it says, but the filthful, the unbelieving, the abominable, you just got the thinking now, what you're doing. The abominable, the murderer, what you're doing. The whoremongers, what you're doing. And sorcerer, what you're doing. And idolaters, what you're doing and what you're thinking. And all liars, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. And I don't know how, I know any other way to make it more plain than that. If you've been a part of this ministry at any length of time, you know it is just plain. I do my best. I endeavor to make it plain and simple, easy to understand, so that you can receive it. Let's move on to Thanksgiving. Now, right out the gate, is Thanksgiving, is that a pagan holiday? No. We know the origins of that, right? Or do we? Let's just say we know a perspective. And it depends on who told you that perspective, right? We know a perspective. Right? Some of you know that, hey, the Pilgrim and the Indians, they got along and had a little treaty and had this great big feast, and there you go. We're all good, all happy. Right? Or natives. So, let's look at this, right? Now, the winner, the victor in this war or genocide, the winner, they call it Thanksgiving. The other side of the table calls it the National Day of Mourning. I wonder why. See, one side tells history is written by the victor, right? So we got that version. But let's look at the other side. I'm reading, it said Thanksgiving, a national day of mourning for Indians, okay, Mr. Mooninum James, okay, and McTowan Monroe. It says here in this letter, there's an article here, it says, every year since 1970, the United American Indians of New England have organized the National Day of Mourning observance in Plymouth at noon on Thanksgiving Day. Every year, hundreds of Native people and our supporters from all four directions join us. Every year, including this year, Native people from throughout the Americas will speak the truth about the history and about current issues and struggles we are involved in. Why do hundreds of people stand out in the cold rather than sit home eating turkey and watching football? Do we have something against a harvest festival? Of course not. But Thanksgiving in this country, and in particular in Plymouth, is much more than a harvest home festival. It is a celebration of the Pilgrim mythology. According to this mythology, the Pilgrims arrived, the native people fed them and welcomed them. The Indians promptly faded into the background, and everyone lived happily ever after. That's a pretty good summation. That's a pretty good summation, right? The truth is a sharp contrast to that mythology. Now let's look at the real story, or the other side, right? There's always two sides to every story. And you can't make a proper judgment unless you have both sides, right? So let's look at the other side. The Pilgrims are glorified and mythologized because the circumstances of the first English-speaking colony in Jamestown were frankly too ugly. For example, they turned to cannibalism to survive, to hold up as an effective national myth. Okay? The Pilgrims did not find an empty land any more than Columbus discovered anything. Every inch of this land is Indian land. The Pilgrims, who did not even call themselves Pilgrims, did not come here seeking religious freedom. They already had that in Holland. They came here as part of a commercial venture. They introduced sexism, racism, anti-lesbianism and gay bigotry, jails, and the class system to these shores. One of the very first things they did when they arrived at Cape Cod, before they even made it to Plymouth, was to rob Wampanoag graves at Cornhill and steal as much of the Indians' winter provisions of corn and beans as they were able to carry. They were no better than any other group of Europeans when it came to their treatment of indigenous people here. And no, they did not even land at that sacred shrine called Plymouth Rock, a monument to racism and oppression, which we are proud to say we buried in 1995. The first official day of Thanksgiving was proclaimed in 1637 by Governor Winthrop. He did so to celebrate the safe return of men from the Massachusetts Bay Colony who had gone to Mystic, Connecticut, to participate in the massacre of over 700 Pequot women, children, and men. About the only true thing in the whole mythology is that these pitiful European strangers would not have survived their first several years in New England were it not for the aid of Wampanoag people. What native people got in return for this help was genocide, theft of our lands, and never-ending repression. We are treated either as quaint relics from the past and or are, to most people, virtually invisible. Can we give thanks for the fact that our many reservations, on many reservations, unemployment rates surpass 50%. Our life expectancies are much lower, our infant mortality and teen suicide rates much higher than those of white Americans. Racist stereotypes of Native Americans, such as those perpetuated by the Cleveland Indians, the Atlanta Braves, and countless local and national sports teams persist. Every single one of the more than 350 treaties that Native nations signed has been broken by the U.S. government. The bipartisan budget cuts have severely reduced educational opportunities for Native youth and the development of new housing on reservations, and have caused many deadly cutbacks in healthcare and other necessary services. Are we to give thanks for being treated as unwelcome in our own country? Or perhaps we are expected to give thanks for the war that is being waged by the Mexican government against indigenous people there. With the military aid of the U.S. in the form of helicopters and other equipment, when the descendants of the Aztec, Maya, and the Inca flee to the U.S., the descendants of the washed ashore pilgrims term them illegal aliens and hunt them down. We object to the Pilgrim Progress Parade and that what goes in Plymouth because they are making millions of tourist dollars every year from the false pilgrim mythology. That money is being made off the backs of our slaughtered indigenous ancestors. An increasing number of people are seeking alternatives to such holidays as Columbus Day and Thanksgiving. And they are coming to the conclusion that if we are ever to achieve some sense of community, we must first face the truth about the history of this country and the toll that history has taken on the lives of millions of indigenous, black, Latino, Asian, and poor and working class white people. The myth of Thanksgiving, served up with dollops of European superiority and manifest destiny, does not work for many people in this country. As Malcolm X once said about the African American experience in America, we did not land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Exactly. Okay, and that is found on www.uaine.org. uaine.org if you want to see that. So let's go ahead and go back to the scriptures in Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to go back to Corinthians chapter 10, brothers and sisters. See, if we understand this about this idea of Thanksgiving, it's good for you to know the other side. What's the other perspective? What happened, right? See, when it comes to history, we're taught what they want us to know. What we learned in history is not all history. It's one person's perspective or one side's perspective on a particular event. And so, no, Thanksgiving is not, quote unquote, pagan. But you need to tell me, what are you celebrating? What are we really celebrating? The story you've been told, is it true? And this, what I'm sharing with you, brothers and sisters, is merely the tip of the iceberg. It is but a sliver of the other information that's out there, but I can't give you all that because time does not permit. But it's all there to be had, just at your fingertips. All you have to do is look. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I'm going to pick it up at verse 14. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice, and I'm in verse 20. 1 Corinthians 10, I'm in verse 20. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Look at what Paul is saying in verse 21. You can't do both. You can't do both. I think I'm gonna celebrate these feast days of the Lord, but then I'm also celebrate the holidays. No, let me read it for you again. You cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and drink the cup of devils. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. I think I'm gonna do the holy days and I'm gonna do the holidays. No, you can't do that. You pick one or the other. I celebrate the holy days. I do not celebrate Halloween. I do not celebrate Thanksgiving. I do not celebrate Christmas. I do not celebrate Easter. No. You know why? Because I had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to go back and research it. And you don't think I just went, just Wikipedia that. No, I went everywhere. Encyclopedias, internet searches, articles, videos, over and over and over. And you know what I found? A lot of corroboration. A lot of different origins of where it started. I got some of that. I got a lot of corroborations. A lot of that's the same, but all the alternatives were still pagan. Was it Gaelic, Welsh, Irish? Doesn't matter, still pagan. Roman Catholic Church, doesn't matter, still pagan. It doesn't matter. But all the roads, during my research over the years, all the roads led to very similar places, if not the same, very similar, and it doesn't matter, they were all pagan. And so I gave them up years ago. Because I said, why am I doing this? I was doing it when I was raised in that. And as an adult, I was like, why am I doing this again? Why am I continuing this tradition? What is this tradition? Where did it come from? And many times we just rationalize. We say, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's for the children. Well, that's not why I do it. I do it for this reason. Stop it. Stop it. We're not doing that. Stop it. Stop it. Let's just be adults about this. Let's look at it for what it is. I don't care how you repackage it, repurpose it, rename it. It doesn't matter. Let's not do that. Deuteronomy 18. I'm going to Deuteronomy 18. Let's pick it up at 9. Deuteronomy 18 and 9. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer, for all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God does drive them out from before thee. He doesn't want any part of this. He wants no part of it. And he doesn't want you to have any part of it. So I'm going to ask you, I'm talking to the adults in the room. What are you going to teach your children? Now, I understand that they're going to grow up and they get to do what they want. I get that. Okay? I have an adult child myself. I get that. They can grow up and they can do whatever they want. But what are you going to do while they're small? What are you going to do? Because this is up to you. You have to break the cycle. You can't keep using and leaning on the excuse of the parents. You can't do that. Okay, yeah, they didn't teach you when you were little, but now that you are grown, now that you are an adult, a thinking adult, what are you going to do? The time to play games is over. You cannot manipulate, twist, and cajole anything. When you are standing before your maker, that is it. It's go time. You can't lie. You can't shuck and jive and buck dance and try to weasel your way out of the situation. Right now, you are learning and getting it in your head. You should be having a sober thought. Do I really want to do this Halloween thing? Should I keep doing this Halloween thing? Do you believe the correct thing about Thanksgiving? You do know a nation of people were slaughtered almost to extinction. I don't see that many native people around. I know they're around, trust me, okay? I've been to New Mexico, lived in Arizona. I've been around. I've been to Indian towns. I've been around. But what are their numbers compared to everybody else? Now, I'm not comparing to us because, black people are less than 15% in this country. I understand that. But I'm talking about compare them to white. Now, this is their country, but the Europeans, compare their numbers to the European numbers. So you do realize something happened, right? They were here first, right? The natives, they were here. So something happened. So you're still going to believe what you've been told about Thanksgiving? Are the natives celebrating it? Or are they like, yeah, Thanksgiving, yeah. What do they have to say about it? You see, other cultures, they have this thing that they do, and that a lot of times we don't do. They pass down oral history and tradition. They pass down some of their wisdom, and they let their children and grandchildren know some things that went down. That's why they have a different perspective. So a lot of us, the other nation is going to say, surely we have inherited lies. And I'm telling you right now, you have inherited the lies when it comes to all of these holidays. You've inherited lies. And because it's so fun, no one wants to check behind it. No one wants to check behind the tradition of it all. No one wants to take a look at it. Why? Because it's filled with cakes and cookies and turkey and giblet gravy, and it's so much fun. Why would I want to even look behind that? I don't care how the sausage is made. I just want to have fun. Let's just do this. Let's just get this done. Brothers and sisters, I just want to give you the information. That's it. I just want you to have the information. But you're going to make your own decision. And you have choices to make. Choose wisely. You have holidays and you have holy days. The choice is yours. The scriptures have put before you life and death. And it even gives you some advice. It says, choose life. So we know the people who are not going to make it. My prayer to you is that you're not one of them. This is part 1 of the season of the heathen. I hope someone has been edified. We're going to talk about the other days in part 2 of season of the heathen. Search the scriptures and prove all things. Shalom, Israel.